Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. People, did you have something,
Oh,
or
yeah.
you just?
Oh, I just had like I'm just putting that on the radar again.
Ah,
Like I was looking at discourse. We had again another question about gravity and the sign convention, and I still could not find a page with like where we have the convention for SimPEG and especially that Z positive up. So I'm just putting that on the table again. That something we should probably like keep put make a record of and put somewhere that we can point people to.
yeah, there should probably just be a nice page in the documentation. Clearly, it's like coordinate system. This is the SimPEG convention for all of our stuff, and then just kind of go through and see how it. A nice discussion, a nice little, or a nice few words I just kind of mentioned, like, oh, traditionally gravity is this way, but in SimPEG, like this is the effect that it has on the SimPEG coordinate system, how you would transform it into the SimPEG. It'd kind of be nice. And similar things would probably be good for MT as well.
Yeah.
Just
So
kind of notes.
just have a page for that.
Yeah. Um, so I can go next. Over the past week, I pulled in my IP bug fix for the SimPEG master. It just contained that thing that allows you to use apparent resistivity, apparent conduct, or apparent chargeability for like multiple receivers of the same type. It allows you to attach one receiver to multiple sources when you have those kind of receiver observations, as well as there's also another small little bug from the N2D IP that got fixed there. I just pulled that in, and then it also led me to look at there's a lot of other places that we could still simplify the IP code, just kind of repeated code in there. You essentially could handle the entire thing by just defining a new sigma derivative or rho derivative in terms of an eta derivative on those functions. So I played around with it a little bit, and it seemed to work really well. But I need to, we'll have to double check with like inheritance and everything, and make sure that it actually calls the right functions. It'll look clean though. The other thing is I just went through and added some tests to my boundary condition branch, convergence tests as far as approximating those integrals that I was showing you guys. So using the things to approximate those integrals, ensuring that they converged at the second order convergence like we would expect. They all do, except I'm still trying to wrap my head around how to do an edge vector boundary integral on a curvilinear mesh, because it requires like all the inverse coordinate system transformations locally. So if any of you guys have any experience with doing those kind of inverse transformations on the curvilinear mesh from local, from like the weird orientation to like the actual things, and then doing the averaging, it's the same kind of thing that happens on like the 2D curvilinear mesh integral, like volume integrals, same kind of thing that happens on the 3D curvilinear mesh on a face, like on a surface, because it's kind of like just an integral, like it's just a 2D mesh on a boundary. But I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around how to do that coordinate system transformation when we've got like 3 vectors, but we only need 2 of them, and then they're still in 3D, so it's like a 3D surface, and then there's edge vectors that live on certain places, and it's not just a single quantities, and it's kind of, I don't know. It's been wrapping my head around it. I know it needs to happen, but either way, the way that it already works, that it's already written, works for everything except that like edge vector boundary integral when it's not a flat surface on the boundary. But so all the other type of integrals already work because there's not vectors. You're only integrating things from nodes to faces, or things that already live on faces, so it doesn't matter. It's only when we're averaging things from like the edge vectors to the faces is when it gets weird. That's what I. Devin, do you mind?
Yeah, so just finishing touches on the DCIP review, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to work on after that. So there's some stuff with EM1D if we want to continue down that route, or another thing is to keep the ball rolling on the documentation on the Discretize website. So yeah, we've had a lot of plans and comments and input for how we want to organize everything from tutorials to API, but we're not really following. Well, I guess I haven't been able to follow up on that as much as I'd like to. So I think it's kind of important. And so maybe I'll put some energy there when I'm done. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Lindsay, do you mind starting up next?
Sure. So I posted in Slack, and we can maybe circle back to this at the end if you want. I sketched out a document with some suggested next steps for the governance conversation. So these are kind of some of my thoughts on this. It's absolutely a sketch, and so if there's stuff in there that you disagree with or have concerns about or want to see changed or suggestions for improvement, like please share all those thoughts. This is meant to be a conversation starter. And so what I was kind of thinking is we can give folks a bit of time to read through this, kind of collect your own thoughts, add notes to the document. We can have sort of a bit of an asynchronous conversation first, and then pick a time for a meeting. So we can figure out, I don't know how long folks want sort of in between. If you want a few days to be able to go through stuff, then we could do something early next week. Or if you want to read it this afternoon, we could do something tomorrow. So I'm easy on timing. Do we want to open that up for discussion now, Joe, or do you want to circle back to that?
No, we can set a time now. I think we're moving along fine.
Okay. Yeah, what do folks think? Do you want a little bit of time to read through, collect thoughts? Do you want to meet tomorrow? Thibaut is messaging early next week. Sure. Yeah, does early next week work for most folks?
Yeah, or Fridays are usually better for me than in the middle of the week, but
so it'll be a Monday morning, so make sure to get anyone like on the European side involved if they would like as well.
fair enough. Yeah, Monday morning, that works for me too.
I'll try and make it. I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks starting next Monday, or starting this Monday, but I might have some time here and there to jump in.
Sure. Well, and John, if you want to read through, and also like I'm happy to jump on a quick call, like one-on-one, to catch your thoughts if you're not able to make it to. And that goes for anyone who's not. If we pick a time that you're not able to make, I'm happy to carve out time to get thoughts one-on-one. I think Monday's a holiday. I don't know if folks are actually taking a holiday because everyone's at home anyways, but I'll maybe just send around a poll with a few times for next week, and we can pick what works. Because I know Craig was interested previously, and so he might want to jump in as well.
Yeah, it's tough, right? It's either Dieter or Craig. They're split the side of the earth.
Either we do it like really late at night here, like around 7 o'clock or something, maybe. I'm not sure what, like, let's see, 7, that's like, I don't know, we'd have to do like really late at night here, right? Like 9 o'clock or something. 9 or 10 o'clock to catch the morning in Europe.
We were once both present, right? I don't remember what time that was. There was once Craig and me. I don't remember, but yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway.
New Zealand should be what, like a day ahead and 4 hours behind?
Well, I mean, they're only like 2 hours behind us technically. So it's like should be 2 or 3 hours behind us, I think. The way it all works out, like it's about. So
It's
probably
6
close
a.m.
to
right now, 6:45 right now.
Oh, I don't think they've done their time change yet.
Okay, well, I'll make a poll and we can
Yeah.
figure it out that way. That's probably quite simplest. So watch for that on the governance channel. And yeah, so feel free to add notes directly to the Google Doc. If there's sort of discussion items you want to ping on Slack, go for it. If there's anything you want to talk about one-on-one or anything like that, feel free to ping me directly. I'm more than happy to chat on this. The other one I wanted to just flag, or the other item, a lot of projects are renaming. I mean, so GitHub changed sort of the default branch from being master to main because of the connotations of master with master slave and not being particularly inclusive. So I wanted to just pose, do we want to actually go through and make that change? GitHub has like made that much easier to do. And so I would suggest we do that. And I think it's just then a bit of timing and coordination on that, but it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we did it on our side, and it's like nothing really, right? You just repath your test and whatnot to main. It's pretty easy.
Perfect.
Yeah, like,
Okay. Excellent. I'm happy to take a pass at doing that. I took a quick read through what GitHub's, they've got a simple workflow. And Dom, if you've done that, if I run into any issues, I'll ping you.
Just follow the instructions.
All right, I think I can manage that. That is it for me.
Okay. Dom, I see you have yourself listed next.
Yeah, no big programming, but I ran some MVI for consulting, and it was in I think it's somewhere in Brazil or something, and at low latitude, and then MVI is giving some little bit interesting behavior, not exactly what we were hoping. So we might have to revive the amplitude inversion at some point. That's all I have to say. More work
Dom,
on MAG.
With the MVI that you're doing with SimPEG, would the UBC have exactly the same problems, or is there something different?
It will be the same behavior. The issue is that it's cheaper in terms of minimization to put anomalies between the positive and the negative under the data than putting it in the middle, right? So you end up having basically MAG anomalies that are the wrong place. The only way we've managed to get around this is by putting a ref model on the angles, right? So try to push things to be induced, but then that's counter to the philosophy of MVI. So yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum.
Okay, kind of remember Yago wrote a paper about the reduced pole in the lower like an equator, I guess. And
yeah.
Can we actually can you do that just using some sort of solving an inverse problem just to do a reduced pole, and then assuming that is correct and doing an inversion like a whatever NBI or whatever inversion you're doing. Just
yeah. Yeah, but if we RTP, then we're kind of losing our phase information. So we're basically losing the remnants, right? And technically RTP fails if you have remnants. That's the main issue, right? RTP will fail if you have remnants, yeah.
In this case, is the remnants really severe and at a very different angle? Or, if you do something, that kind of neglects that, at least you're putting a body in more or less in the center where the zero crossing is. And then from there, that might be enough to get it going.
Yeah, but they know that they have different phases of volcanism, and that they have some parts that are remnants, some parts they're not. And it's at the equator, right? So it's really hard to understand just looking at the data. We can't start playing those games like it's so, covering like large areas and things are changing constantly. We need a more foolproof strategy. Yeah, it's interesting though.
But it makes sense to encourage, no, not necessarily. Trying to
That's
like
that's why the amplitude inversion is interesting, right? Because technically everything is an envelope, so you could basically do a joint inversion of amplitude and TMI, and then having the amplitude inversion try to just fix the, basically what we did for Doug in our in our abstract, but do it as a joint, both an NBI and sorry, do like an NBI with 2 data sets basically. That's a
it's an interesting, like I've seen that problem come up many times in a few of the listening to other people talk about low latitude magnetic problems. So it's interesting.
Yeah, there's another also, before I switch up, there's also an interesting problem with NVI is that if you have a large body, it will have the tendency to put the magnetization on the edges of it. Just because it's, again, it's cheaper to have a shell than a bulk, than a big volume, right? So it can fit everything by just putting magnetic like basically cells all around it with the right magnetization. So again, that's something we need to prevent from happening, because then we can't trust the angles of magnetization, and then we just get the shell of it, right? So we don't get like a bulk.
Yeah, I think it's like a similar problem as far as like, so we're more sensitive, like we're actually sensitive to like a susceptibility contrast. Like the quantity that we're actually inverting for could be a susceptibility contrast. So we get to think, so wherever it's like constant in a direction, it kind of, there's no sensitivity to something that's not changing.
Yeah, I'm not sure which part is pushing more. It could be the ref too, right? Because we're technically pushing on a 0 ref. So if you, it's just cheap. It's just easier to put it on the edges. Basically, that's what's happening.
Can you just remove the ref? Is that like makes more problem?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can remove the ref. Yeah, but then after this, if you remove the ref, then you can't really do sparsity, or I guess you need to do it in 2 steps, like you're doing, SUG, right? Do like no ref, and then do another run sparsity with the ref back in somehow, like the previous model.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, just
interesting.
Yeah, interesting problems.
Okay. John, so you got yourself next.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I did a little bit of stuff last week besides moving. So yeah, I just worked a little bit more on the MPI DASC stuff that we're doing with our cluster at Theus. And then yeah, I'm putting together a little document. I'll probably just share it on CurveNote of how to use Kubernetes with the existing build out of DASC. And yeah, hopefully have that done here soon before I leave. But I'll still be doing a lot of coding at night when I'm gone. So it's all good. And that's it.
Okay. Are there any other quick reports people would like to jump in with before we go on? Hearing no objections. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today is Devin posted an issue, something that him and I have been chatting about, is like just the tutorials in general, and one where the data should live. We kind of brought this up last week, a couple weeks ago maybe, about where they, like how people can get access to them, and as well as just where the tutorials themselves should live. I think is something we else should talk about as well, because these tutorials have been getting pretty computationally cumbersome to run all of them all the time. So I suggested that we just kind of at this point split them off into a separate repository that is just the SimPEG tutorials. It's something that what we can do is we can something, we can trigger a build on that every time, like maybe a commit is pushed to the main branch. We could trigger a commit to the tutorials to make sure to have them run at least. But that's just kind of one of the original thoughts. I'm not, does anybody have any suggestions other than that as far as tutorials or thoughts?
What about not triggering or only triggering builds on a pull request? So not having those run every single time, but if there's like, if it's a pull request, then trigger it only on the one direction, not both ways. Because in some ways it would be nice to keep them sort of in sync and like in one place so that we don't kind of lose track or start to neglect a new repository. But I can be convinced either way. I think either can work.
I guess one thing I was thinking is it's important that whatever is on our main branch or whatever has been, I guess, as a release, the tutorials have to work with those. So whatever tools we're saying, this is our latest official version, has to be working. But it would be, I guess you need something also if you were developing stuff to test it as well. So I guess to always make sure, to always make sure that the latest release of SimPEG is consistent with the tutorials we have, I think is going to be important.
Is the main concern right now with them being in the main SimPEG repo just the timing on tests?
I think that's a big part of it that really kind of prompted this. I mean, even a more pressing thing than tutorials is finishing off the API documentation. We're just kind of lagging behind in some of that. I'd really like to finalize just the auto generation of the API docs and then come up with a plan for where we want to put these tutorials. And I'm totally happy with that. But I agree, they take a really long time to run. And it means we could kind of expand the tutorials even a bit more instead of trying to fit them into the current SimPEG website.
And it kind of takes the SimPEG project itself out of, on a tangent, right? Like,
yeah,
we want to focus on the package itself, not the use cases. That's what I was trying to say, right? And my comment was that use cases should live outside. Like, the SimPEG package should be light. Look at, for instance, SciPy, right? I downloaded it last night. It's 8 megs, right? SciPy is tiny, and it's way bigger project than SimPEG, right? And our repo is getting almost the same size as SciPy. So I think we need to focus more. Try to what is SimPEG? What are we trying to do in SimPEG? And then use cases can live like outside, be like parallel projects, basically.
I'm a bit concerned with discoverability of the tutorials then. I mean, because right now it is nice that they are in the docs. And at least like if you install SimPEG from PyPy or Conda Forge, the tutorials I don't believe come with it. So that shouldn't impact the size of the install unless you're a developer and have installed from Git.
Yeah, but we can link, right? We can just do external projects and then link it to like a separate page. That's what PyVista does. There is like, here's all the other people who've done the work with PyVista. They're exposed, but take them out, right? Doesn't need to be lived inside.
Yeah, and I guess I thought that we have the SimPEG.xyz landing page, which kind of says this is all the stuff we're working on. We have a link to the SimPEG documentation, which I think we want to make that leaner. We have a link to the discretized documentation, and then I guess there was PyMat solver and something else. And then I guess we would just have a place there that says like tutorials for SimPEG, and we'd have to make a tutorials for discretize as well. Like I agree with the linkability, but I also agree with what Lindsay's saying about discoverability, because it's when people can't find stuff, when there isn't a giant button that says tutorials go here right up in front, people don't like to read through stuff in that much detail in their first pass if they're in a hurry. So they do need to be easy to find, and a lot of people are learning how to use SimPEG through those tutorials.
So if they are separated, it could be, like we could have it almost at a higher level there that it's discoverable, not necessarily within the docs, it's discoverable right at the SimPEG.xyz site.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, like I guess
And there would still be a link to them within the documentation of SimPEG. Like it could still be a nice big header if they're like, oh, SimPEG examples or SimPEG tutorials.
Yeah, I guess the whole thing is we love to have a landing page, in some ways what we did with the GeoSci.xyz project, where we have this landing page and we want to funnel people towards that landing page when they're first using stuff and see where they can go.
I guess I don't know, and this might be a question we should even ask in the Slack, is what site do people interact with first? Because I wouldn't be surprised if most people are interacting with docs.simpeg.xyz first, and that's where they're going to learn about SimPEG. And if that's the case, then I would suggest that we make it very highly discoverable from there. I mean, we should absolutely have examples sort of from the SimPEG site too, but I would suspect that a lot of people are finding it through the docs.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that would look different is that as far as the documentation, it would still be like one of those major headers on the documentation page. It would that would be an external link to the other, to the SimPEG. And this is kind of what it would look like if we do go through that. A while back, I showed the formatting change for the scientific Python, like what they've been doing as far as formatting their documentation pages recently. Like there's those headers at the top. So those kind of correspond to our headers on the left right now. But they don't expand on the left. Like they don't expand at the top, it's just the name. So it wouldn't really, if we go to that, it wouldn't really change that at all. It's just one of those is going to be an external link to the tutorials.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, would we lose the ability to cross-link to the API documentation? Because right now it is pretty easy to do internal references, like from the tutorials to just saying reference this class. Would we have to then make all of those external links?
You just have to use InteresThings on SimPEG itself, and then it works.
Okay.
Because I have my gallery external just because it takes too long to build, and I have, just like Joe said, I have still a chapter that says gallery, and when you go there in the docs, it's just a link to another doc that is the gallery. But then all the cross-linking works without problem through InteresThings.
I don't think I've played around too much with InteresThings, but are you saying that you're generating it externally, and then InteresThings will allow you to kind of bring in the pictures of the results into a gallery, or are you just connecting to websites?
No, I just meant because Lindsay mentioned to API, so you would have the colon function or class colon, and then the backtick your function name backtick, and then InteresThings does directly the link to the documentation of this function.
Okay.
With examples and thumbnails, that I'm not sure. I just mean to API references. Like you use InteresThings now already in the docs, I think, but not to SimPEG itself, or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's InteresThings within the SimPEG, and we use it to actually to get the discretize as well, right?
Yeah.
We link
So
the
it's just
tensor
the
meshes
same.
and stuff. Yeah,
So I
like I
guess-
said, the way that I think that I envision it keeping it up to date, if they're separated, is to have it just do automated builds on pulls to master or pull to the main, on not on pulls, but like whenever something is merged into the main, that would trigger a build on the SimPEG like tutorials, and like it would run them. So that way, like it not necessarily on tags, but it would allow us to like, okay, before we actually tag as a release, we would ensure that the tutorials run.
Makes sense to me.
Then when, let's say, when I made a change on the tutorial side, trigger like what kind of test are we triggering on that side? Is that just like checking the main SimPEG branch and see if that's running?
Well, wouldn't it, when you're doing the test, wouldn't you have you could basically have a particular version of SimPEG that you are using for the test, and then it would run the tutorials using that version of SimPEG, correct? So then whenever a SimPEG version, a new SimPEG version comes out, we need something to update the version of SimPEG that's being used to test these tutorials.
Okay.
And I guess by calling the tutorials test somehow from the SimPEG test, sort of ensuring that works. But there needs to be, I guess, a process of saying, we've just released something, a new version of SimPEG. We need to now let the tutorials know that they're calling a newer version of SimPEG. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I think so. You're kind of, the case you're talking about is that like, okay, you're developing a new tutorial that's relying on something like on a different branch than the main branch of SimPEG. Or so how do I tell it to download that one? Again, as far as testing or automated testing.
Well, I think if you were developing in this separate tutorials repository and you are trying to build them, you'd be doing so with your development branch of SimPEG. So you would be able to kind of run or regenerate those results with your development branch to make sure you're not breaking anything. But then when it's actually like being released to the world, it needs to be testing with the version of SimPEG that's actually out there, as opposed to a development version.
Dieter, what has been your experience with this kind of problem? Like as far as like keeping them together and keeping them consistent with each other?
Not good. Yes, I have just because of memory and runtime issues on read the docs, I always had them separate and run them definitely before releases. But what I try to do now with the finishing off my project is have a smaller set still in the docs that is run all the time to catch things early, because sometimes it's annoying when everything is ready and then you run the gallery and you find out that you messed up something that is not in your tests yet, because your tests are never complete and then it fails. So, but SimPEG has that anyway, so I don't think it should be a big problem. You would still have many examples probably anyway, even if the tutorials are outside.
Yeah, that's right. The examples are meant to be there to do that, right? Just small, show small sections of the code, not like a story.
Yeah. Some of our gallery examples are pretty lengthy, Dom.
Well, then that's a good time to start figuring out what is an example and what's a tutorial, right?
But I think you could also have, sorry, like many of those jobs will permit to have like a weekly build That was another thing I was thinking of, to have that and just have a weekly build on master, and then you would see a flag if it fails, and you don't release more frequently than weekly, so that should be okay.
Yeah, and Owen, one of the things about those small bite-sized examples, Dom, is how we've experimented with the API, the auto-generated API for discretize, is that at the end of the doc strings, or as part of the doc strings, you can actually put in a snippet of code and show an example of using it and even plot a result out. So, I mean, I guess it's one of the reasons why I actually want to revisit the work we're doing on the discretize API, because that was going to be a template for how we were documenting SimPEG. And I almost think that's even a more important task than creating this thing for tutorials. I'd actually really like
I would
to
actually agree with you, Devin, because I often go to the API also on discretize and SimPEG, because to find something in a tutorial, if you're not doing exactly the same, is sometimes difficult. But then the API often still lacks the information or a small example of how you would use it. So
Yeah.
I actually think the tutorials are probably more entry level, really good. But then everyone who is using it more frequently, I think good APIs would help a lot.
Yeah, we started moving towards was it the NumPy doc auto generation?
Data, I think the theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just things happened, and then that kind of didn't keep going. So I would be happy to go and try and put energy into that and move it forward. But
I think that'd be good. One of the things that kind of was holding us up there was the properties thing. I know I keep asking people to use my branch that I remove properties from and kind of test it out a little bit. I know Dieter was using it. A few small issues, a few small things to talk about as far as like getters, setters, and not getters, like the two-dict serialization formats and things like that.
But yeah, and you've been doing a ton of great work on that, actually. But if you let me know what's done or where to jump in, then maybe that's just a good place for me to go and put in some work.
Has anyone else gotten a chance to switch over and see if it works for them yet?
No, I have not.
I think so.
I think that's what, like, I keep asking people to do it, and I'm hesitant to bring it in without people testing it, because it's a pretty big backend change.
I think I've just been bringing that local version of discretize. I think I've just been using it, but I'll.
Okay.
Joe, would you maybe mind posting the branch name on the SimPEG Slack, and we can then all of us here will give that a try in the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully some other folks too who don't show up to the meetings might also give it a go.
Okay, that'd be good, because that's like kind of the first step in terms of getting the API out. Devin, if you want to keep working off of that one to start adding on a bunch of the like documentation for the classes and stuff, that'd probably be a good thing to do. Yeah, it's gonna it'll likely get pulled in eventually.
Yeah, was it NumPy doc strings API, correct?
I think it was a dprop branch.
You're talking about different things, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you also had one where you're playing around with like a different flavor of how we look at the website. Like I can't remember.
That was something that should be external to the API documentation. So that those changes have just to do with the formatting of this website. Like they don't have anything to do with the internal documentation or anything.
Oh, okay, yeah, so there's no conflict there. You're just able to turn a switch on and off, basically. Okay. See, and so let me just look at all the remotes here. Oh, so yours is yours under J Capriotti? It's one of the ones in there.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just link us up, Joe, if you can.
Yep. I'll put a link to that one. I'll drop it in the curve notes and put it on Slack as well.
Yeah, and you've gotten through the exercise property stuff, haven't you? Or is there still some stuff to do on there?
I mean, I've gotten through it. Like I said, I'm hesitant to bring it in because I want people to test it before it comes forward, like, because it is a pretty big backend thing.
All right, well, I'll get that branch and use that local branch of discretize, and I'll build all of the, I guess I can run through all the tutorials and all the examples gallery and see if that works. And if it does, that's a pretty good check mark.
Okay. What else were we supposed to talk about? I think where we're hosting data for the tutorials. I think that was something we're supposed to talk about. I know we've kind of brought it up in passing before, but does anyone have any other thoughts about it?
Well, for the figures, you have this special repo, right? You link to. Like for some figures, for instance, so in the discretize docs, you don't include the figures in the discretize repo, you link to them. So this could be something for data, right? If you don't modify them often, it could just be in a repo.
Yeah, right now we have a lot of the data on the Google Cloud storage bucket.
How big are we talking about here?
100 megs, 200 megs of data.
Are you storing in there?
I don't know yet. Some of them have Octree models. I'm not storing any Octree meshes. I don't want to store any sensitivities. But
Are they compressed? That's compressed?
No, uncompressed.
Okay, compress them, yeah, first.
I took a sort of a cursory look at kind of the size of the SimPEG repository versus the size of data files and stuff I was keeping in the tutorials, and went, oh, that's a pretty significant percentage. So yes, they should be compressed. They should be stored somewhere else. I'm seeing the light now after being so resistant for so long.
Like we just want to make sure that they're easily accessible. If somebody just like copied the script in and wanted to use it, right? So that we need to be able to download it from somewhere externally. If they are on their own, so I don't think we necessarily need to store like actual model files up there, and like it'd probably be easier to just recreate them when we need them.
Yeah.
Inversion scripts, because it's like I've said it before, but it's the kind of the same logic that, oh yeah, we don't know the model, or we don't know the true model for the inversion. Well, I mean, we're loading in the true model to display it anyway, so we might as well just recreate it functionally instead.
Yeah, and I did that because I didn't want the tutorials to be crazy long or have this really lengthy step that would kind of distract you from the flow of what you're supposed to be learning. But if the user does anything to change the mesh that's going to be used in the inversion, then the size of the models don't match anymore. So yeah, I kind of see that maybe recreating the models, the true model at the end of the inversion maybe something we should do in the script because it just makes it less likely to break or cause problems.
So then that means like we're only basically storing forward model data files up there, or small text data files.
Yeah, basically. And that was kind of the idea and why I wasn't so worried about keeping it in the repository, but yeah, it's not good if things are being downloaded into and written to the actual directories inside the repo. So it sounds like we put the appropriate stuff on the Google Cloud. We would download the files from there. We would put a git ignore. We would add certain things to the git ignore so that they're not going to be tracked, and then we're probably good.
Yeah, you can use temp files, right? You can use the Python temp not package, but functions to just you flush it after the example is run.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of people actually being able to go and like physically look at these files instead of kind of something that's taking a thing from the internet and then loading it into a script. I know I would actually want to go and have the option to open the data file and see it.
If I can,
Yeah, that is like,
Hmm?
is like a decent security issue. Or not to say decent, but just like could be a concern for some people. Like, oh, I'm going to have to download this file that I don't know what's in it. And it's terrible.
Yeah.
well, I mean, if we put the URL in the script from Google Cloud, and if anybody has concerns about that, they can click on the URL first and go preview the file.
Yeah, it's another part of actually like unzipping it and having this full data file is that it lets you teach the users how to use the IO utilities that I've been developing. And that's really like a place where somebody would start is, oh, I've got this formatted DCIP file, and then you just don't do the downloading step, basically.
Well, but Dev, you can do the downloading step, and then folks can look at it. So it doesn't have to be. They don't have to be two separate things, right? I can show you what I did for the. Well, actually, I think the Century one we kept the data in the repository for the transform. But one of the things that I did actually sort of early in that first notebook is actually print out the contents of the file or the first 10 lines of the file or something like that in the tutorial itself. So then folks can actually take a quick look. And if they wanted to drill a level deeper, they can go and open up the file in their own text editor.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm just hoping it doesn't go from a file someplace directly into the framework. I want something where it's okay, download and obtain the file and then unpack it and then have a step that says, okay, you have a data file. You're loading it with a standard IO or whatever IO functionality we have.
Can we automate the uploads to, I guess we can. I mean, we've done it with the documentation before as far as automating the uploads of those files as well. Could be nice to just not worry about having to copy paste everything into not copy paste, but having to physically upload every time a new data file is added or something, or slightly changed.
Well, we're not changing them too often. If we have a use case for that, sure, but I hesitate a little bit right now to kind of over engineer if this is kind of working, and sure it might be a touch funky, but hopefully we shouldn't be changing data files too much.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just put them up on the Google on the cloud. Okay. So do we have a do we have like a kind of decision on what we want to do with the tutorials then? I mean, often it'll be a few steps down the head, but it seems like we're kind of in general leaning towards trying to split them up and see how it goes, see what we can automate and what we can do that way, but just in the future. It's not super relevant to this second, but
Well, it kind of sounds like this facelift to the tutorials is being put on the back burner until we finish the API documentation.
I would vote yes to this. It's more important.
okay. Sounds good. Well then, is there any other discussions people would like to have before we call it a meeting?
There's only one short thing. We did a bunch of development with UBC codes for frequency domain on Octree, and compared that against SimPEG. We added the ability to put in a susceptibility model, and the SimPEG, the analytic, and the E3D codes, all of them show quite a lot of agreement, good agreement for a layered Earth and for a sphere in a vacuum. So yeah, in terms of, I think maybe some improvements could be done to the 3D FEM in SimPEG, but everything is agreeing quite well. So there's a high level of validation there now.
That brings me up that reminds me, Lindsay, you were asking once about the error level we were trying to achieve in our comparison. But as you saw now, Rune's comment that, yeah, he really thinks in marine you should get below 1% relative error.
Oh, wow.
So, otherwise, he says, well, to detect something 3-4 kilometers below the seafloor, you need to see changes that small, which is interesting.
So like if they actually even just stack the data, do you think they're actually getting more than 1% errors?
What do you mean with stacking?
I mean, like it's a continuous measurement, right?
Yeah.
So
the binning
transform, yeah, you do some sort of set, like you have some sort of repeated measurements, I guess. So if you do like simple statistics, then that is actually less than 1%.
Yes, I think so. But you have to take into account that your environment is much less noisy than on land.
That's true, but my general understanding, there are actually quite a few other errors, because like if you think about that, location of your EM receiver is actually uncertain, because they don't know exact location where that it is located.
Depends on the method. But yeah, like in
the
PGS streamer style, you know exactly your source and receivers. In the
Right.
node-based, that's a bit more difficult, yeah. But I think with today's location, it's much better than it was 15 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
But yeah, it's a claim he made. I'm no electrical engineer designing these tools, so I have to take their word. But they designed their source for it. So one way obviously was to make just a much stronger source. So I think in the end they had like 16,000 ampere meter. I don't remember, a very strong source without killing whales, I guess. But yeah, I don't know.
It's good to know. I have a reference. Like that's the bar that you need to make sure.
That's a big moment.
Well, we didn't achieve the bar, but we're close in the paper, so something.
Awesome. Well, hey, with that, I'll see you guys all next week. I'll probably do an after meeting coding thing on next week. On it's a week for that one. So see you guys all in a week.
Thanks, Joe, and everyone.
Thanks, guys.